Welcome to the Curve, where ideas take flight, blending tech and teaching, sparking.
All right, well, welcome to the Learning Curve here at Region 7. My name is Benjamin. I'm the coordinator of digital learning. With me, I have Carl.
I'm Carl Moan, specialist, digital learning specialist.
And today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how we can leverage AI for good in the classroom. And I know we did a podcast on AI a few weeks ago, and we talked about just AI in general, what it is, what it's not. We kind of broke down how it works on there. Today, we're kind of taking another tack to it. You know, our focus today will be talking a little bit about the morals and ethics of how and when to use it, but then also how can we use this tool specifically in the classroom? How can we use it with students? How can we make some of our assignments that we've done past AI resistant? What are some other things we might touch on?
Yeah, well, and really looking at and some of what we have, and you can see, we'll from time to time have the screen shared on our website. Some of the things we talk about are what are some practical use cases of AI outside of the classroom. We talk about that because we want to leverage how to use it inside the classroom and say, hey, there's some really amazing things people are doing. And so we'll reference those a little bit as well.
And that's a good point to bring up. You know, we've always got to be mindful, especially we're secondary teachers. The students we teach from pre-K now until graduation, every student, they're growing up in a world where this is expected. And every student, whether they use it directly or indirectly, is going to need to understand its impact and its influence and its meaning for us in the larger society. Because we know AI has already proved itself to be a disruptive technology, spanning outside of its constraints of typical usage. And so we're seeing this in science, we're seeing this in healthcare, we're seeing this in metallurgy. I mean, we're seeing this everywhere. So bringing in those things I think are very impactful and timely. And we as educators have to keep that in the back of our mind of, the students that we're interacting with are growing up in a world where this is a skill set that they are going to have some understanding and competency in to be competitive in the job market.
And I think that's really the best jumping off point for what we're talking about, because one of the questions that we get when we talk to teachers about this is, isn't this just going to completely destroy creativity in my classroom? My students are never going to have to think on their own anymore. It's just cheating. I just can't stand it. I don't want to use it ever again. And while we recognize that those are valid concerns, and we want to say that those are very valid concerns, and we never want to kind of dismiss those or be dismissive of that, because we know that if a person can make it, then it's fallible. If a person made it and the person made these tools, then there's bias in it, and it can break things, or it can break itself. And so we want to acknowledge that, and we've seen evidence of that before, and we want to acknowledge that. At the same time, and BJ, you made the perfect point there, this is what's being used in every industry. All of them have some little chat bot in the corner. You know, you're on Amazon or whatever, you're trying to buy something. It's like, hey, can I help you? And that's not a person. That's their little chat bot thing or whatever.
Or, very soon we're going to see your phone calls. When you call in now, you'll be talking with an AI model. In many cases now, hopefully they'll first acknowledge that they are that, and then they will offer human assistance if you so desire. But very soon, most of our phone calls, when you're calling in for help in some way or capacity, are going to be involved or having AI heavily involved in that.
And we don't think that's a bad thing, because there are a lot of things that the AI can do that are much faster, much more efficient, and cost less than all the processes you have to go through and will be faster for you because you're not having to wait on hold for half an hour.
More accurate. I mean, how many times have we gone through a drive-through where if you had an AI model running that drive-through board, your model, I mean, your order would actually be more accurate. Wendy's early on last year started integrating some of those tools into their, it's now in a small area just testing it out, and they found that it was more accurate than a human would be at that. Now that brings into the conversation of, well, job replacement, job change, and that's a very scary thing.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of validity to that, but I also want to talk about, we've got to really look, what type of work are we wanting to change? And like the phones are a great example. We want AI to do our dishes and our laundry.
Absolutely.
We don't want it to do our creative work. We want it to free up time so that we can pursue those higher endeavors in our lives. And that applies all folds, all facets, all industries, and all those things. And so businesses are leaning into these tools to help make themselves more efficient. And,
Yep.
and if you look at what business is designed to do is, I need to be more efficient than my competitor. I need to make more for less. I need to use less resources to make more. All of those things, and in a lot of cases, AI is helping with that, making them more competitive. So
Yeah.
it's only going to be adapted more. I don't think it's going away in
Right.
any form or fashion. It may
Right.
change over time, and most likely it will, but it's here to stay. The genie's out of the bottle, so we need to kind of really see where this is going.
Yeah, so we need to get our students literate in using AI and AI technology so that when they leave us, they're going into a world where they are prepared for what's awaiting them.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on that is that we have to get them ready and prepared, because even if they use it or not,
Yeah.
it will be used on them.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
Indeed, Monster.com, all of the various websites for jobs listings and all those things, they're pre-screening resumes with AI, and they've been doing that for about a year, and that's going to continue. So we now have to rethink how we write resumes. It's not that we won't need resumes, we won't write them, but we're going to need to write them with the understanding that they're first going to be seen by AI. So what keywords do we need to have in
Right.
there? What layout if we put pictures in there, is the AI going to be able to interpret it versus other things? So, I mean, these are all things that we're all going to have to rethink how we do. If our students have gone through their whole educational career and they haven't interacted with AI in some way, they're probably not going to be set up for success
Right.
in the way that students that have been.
Right. And I think that's an important distinction, is students who are prepared to use it and students who aren't. Or students who are prepared to use it ethically, and then students who learned how to use it on TikTok.
Yeah.
And those are very, very different things. And so we get to have influence in that. Where we can either just turn them over to the internet and say, here, go learn how to use this, and they will learn how to use it. Do we want them to learn how to use it inappropriately or appropriately? And so that's what this kind of whole conversation is about. We want to talk about some practical things and show you some strategies, but we want you to think about what's the world your students are going into, and how can you best prepare them to interact in that world. So what you're going to see on the screen now is this is our website that we use when we do training. You'll see the bit.ly link. There is a QR code there if you want to click on that. We update this site. We try to update it semi-regularly. Some of it is, and as you read through it, some of it's just a brain dump where it's got all of our stuff on there. We try to kind of cull some things out and clean it up, but this is what we've got. And
We also like to edit it when the other is usually in a district presenting on it the day of. That's always really enjoyable.
that is never. I have never ever done that.
Nor have I ever done to you.
So, but this is where we're kind of working from, and the whole idea. We're not going to go through the whole website, but I do want to pull out a couple of things in here that kind of maybe demonstrate some of the ideas that we're talking about. Show you some use cases for this, and first of all, as we're working through, we want to look at, and what you'll see on your screen here is, and I don't ever remember the name of the T-1000 or something like that from Terminator. AI is not this. Now, sometimes we'll say yet, because perhaps it will be. We don't think it will be that. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to take over the world. It's a machine, and it's running in the background what's called a large language model. And we may have already said this. We talk about this so much
providing
that
context.
yeah, we might have already said that before. But what we want to kind of reference, and I'm going to skip over here to this why is it important page, because on this page you're going to see some of the things that we were just talking about, some of these use cases in the real world. But when we're thinking about education and school assignments in particular, this is where I want to get down here. So this assignment right here, this is actually one of my assignments that I had in the class that I taught, and it was a humanities class. This is a world history side of this, and this is about a 14th century explorer, Ibn Battuta, and what the idea behind this assignment was to talk about the interconnectedness of society. And so when you look at these cities here, Guangzhou and Calicut and Mecca and Kilwa and Timbuktu, when you look at these cities, it was all about how these trade routes were connected, and people people are connected by trade. That we, in a global society, we're connected by trade. And so this was kind of an introductory assignment that's leading them into this idea of globalization. I was really proud of this assignment. This came out of a conversation where we're trying to say, all right, how can we create an assignment that can be, and this came a little bit from the performance assessment in TEKS resource system, but how can we create an assignment that's going to engage our students that they're not going to be able to Google the answer for? And so this was a really good example of a non-Googleable assignment, because when you're looking at this, it's a travel log. You're writing a journal entries about this traveler. So they would have to look up these cities, Guangzhou, Calicut, Mecca. They'd have to look up these cities. They'd have to find out what are these cities like. You know, how do people get around? You see that, the modes of transportation, trade, goods, culture, all of
Was
those
this like
things.
a group project? Was this individual, or how was it?
We did it both ways.
Okay.
So and it just kind of depended. Honestly, it depended on the year and it depended on the students.
There you go. Hey, I understand.
You know, why not? And so, but they had to look up all of these things, and so you could Google the modes of transportation, you could Google the trade goods, but you couldn't Google Ibn Battuta's impressions of those things. And so you had to really get into that and think about this explorer. What would you think if this is the first time you're seeing the camels, being used? What would you think about that? It's like, what in the world are these strange horses or cows? I've never seen anything like that,
Which again, I think that's fascinating what you said right there, and we'll touch more on this, but bringing their thoughts into that process. And I think that's key. We'll
and that's exactly where we wanted to get them, is they're having to engage with this stuff and really consider this. This was high level, critical thinking, problem solving kind of stuff, and it was not Googleable. And so it was an excellent assignment. Then ChatGPT came. And we know this is the truth here, because we had a colleague who had a daughter in the class who, when he looked at the assignment, was like, man, this is a wonderful assignment. It's non-Googleable. This is fantastic. And his daughter was quite resourceful, and she used ChatGPT. And it was not AI resistant.
I mean, it had the answer in 30 seconds?
Seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A minute, maybe?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
it was well written. Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is it probably had access to journals that Ibn Battuta potentially wrote, or maybe somebody wrote about him or something like that. And so it was probably pretty accurate. Now, I don't know if he actually wrote a travel journal or not, but he was a famous explorer at that point in time, and that time. So,
and again, what grade level?
This was 10th grade.
10th grade.
10th grade.
So
Yeah.
I would hazard, though, in this case, in this example, ChatGPT has access to everything that's freely available on the internet.
Absolutely.
Every peer-reviewed journal, every dissertation that's been written about the traveler, the explorer, Ibn Battuta, and all of the various places.
Or every 10th grader's assignment who's ever written on that,
Yeah. And so it's able to go in and get all of that data and make assumptions based off that data, or make extrapolate information out of that to get a response.
Yeah.
I would hazard that it's able to read all of those things in seconds, as we've seen, whereas an 11th grade, 12th grade, 10th grade,
Sophomore.
sophomore wouldn't have been able to do that in all the time given for the assignment.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what we discovered is the best non-Googleable assignment that we had was not AI resistant. And so now we have to pivot. We had to rethink, what is this going to look like? Because as great as this is no longer the assignment that's used in that class, because you simply can't do it. And I want to reference this little graphic right up here at the top, because it says ChatGPT will be brutal in classrooms where writing is assigned rather than taught. And this is one of the things that we as a department have really leaned into, as we're thinking about how can we really use AI tools, because students are going to use them. They're going to use them. How can we use them for good? And so the key thing, and this is the mantra that we've been saying over and over and over and over and over, is that if writing becomes the point, we've already lost. If the product becomes the point, we've already lost the product of the learning. Whereas rather than focus on the product, we want to focus on the process of learning. So what does it mean when we think about process over product?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I would then say, well, is writing dead? yes or no, why, and
Yeah.
the answer. I'm just hitting it.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
I have my own thought. And
Right.
I'm not, like, here,
Because I want to say it's not dead because I think there's such power in the written language and there's such beauty in the written language. But even as I'm saying that, I recognize that perhaps technical writing and how we've approached it and how we've thought about that, maybe it needs to evolve. Whereas creative writing and poetry and drama and those kinds of things perhaps can be assisted, but there's still, because there's some things that AI doesn't do well or bring in human personality and human emotion. It's getting better. I hate to say it, it's getting better at that.
No, yeah.
But those creative things and that kind of thing, I think is still very much alive. Whereas sometimes, perhaps, and maybe I'm mistaken about this, sometimes though it seems like maybe some of that technical writing is, maybe we're moving to
I know it's tough. No, and
well, I don't want to say it on camera too, because then it's going to be recorded for posterity. I don't know.
Well, and again, I think I set you up for that. I don't think writing is dead.
Right.
I don't think that is dead now, because ultimately, if we go down to what writing is it's expressing the human condition in some form or fashion, and that'll always be there. I think the modes and the methods will change, similar to like when the typewriter showed up. Calligraphers were, well, what is this? This is a monstrosity. This is, all the various things like that. And calligraphy hasn't fallen away.
Yeah.
Now, we're not teaching it in schools.
But
that doesn't mean that goes away.
No. I think you bring up a really, and I want to rabbit trail for just a second and then come back, because I think you bring up a really, really interesting point here. Because now the people who do professional calligraphy, they are paid very well for it.
Yeah.
And it is a skill, and they are paid super well. So I'm transitioned to pants, all right? Because in mass market textile production, clothes become cheaper, but perhaps the quality has dropped. And so you find some people who have gone back to their hand making pants or boots or shirts or jackets or whatever. And so tailors haven't just completely gone extinct. They are paid handsomely for their work because it is highly skilled work that the best looms in the world simply can't. The best machines, I know that.
Geared towards efficiency and
Absolutely.
quality, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if you meant the pun in there, but that's right. They're paid handsomely because they make us look handsome.
They do,
right?
absolutely.
No, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I don't think it's going to destroy writing.
Yeah.
I think it will enhance it in many ways. And you mentioned something, too, that I feel like we have to address with AI. We are in its infancy.
Yeah.
If we were in the room when the first automobile showed up, and people laughed at it, scoffed at it, and said, well, it isn't nearly as fast as a horse, this will never go anywhere. And then you advance it 5 years, and it's faster than a horse now. And then you advance it 20 years, and then you advance it 50 years. And now we're to the point where automobiles are ubiquitous. We just accept that. We're at that moment where right now, what is in front of us a year and a half in is drastically better than what it was a year ago. And it's already a disruptor in many industries. And so we have to acknowledge that what we're dealing with today is not going to be what it is in 10 years.
Right.
So I think of that writing, what is it going to look to the preschoolers that are in school right now? And we don't know. I mean, I can speculate on there, but I do know ultimately the human condition stays the human condition.
Right.
And the need to express ourselves is always going to be there, whether it's in the form of writing or otherwise. One thing that happened early on when AI first came out is all these publishers were getting bombarded with books. People were writing with AI. And the editors were really alarmed at first. And then they sat down and they started reading some of the things they made. And what was impressive, what they said, is that while grammatically, these books are exceptional.
Yeah.
No errors, our editors don't have to really change much in there. When it came to content, it was drivel.
Yeah.
It made cogent arguments from paragraph to paragraph, but it had nothing that was perceived as understanding the human condition in a way that would be compelling for us to purchase it or sell it.
Yeah.
And so the great thing with this is and you talked about it in the wording that you chose, and I think it was really technical writing, it's going to affect the creativity side of that. I don't think it's there, even though it can make compelling little short stories and things like that, novels, books, ideas. Like, this is not going to produce the next Iliad. This is not going to produce the next Odyssey that lasts for thousands of years on there. Now, it can help and assist, but I think that's what it'll ultimately be. It'll be an aid to, not a replacement of.
Yeah. So how can we use these tools? How can we use and we don't really like to put students in front of ChatGPT, but there's a tool, and we've done an episode about this already called Magic School, that we think is a really safe place to send students for a couple of reasons. It returns only academic answers. It's students don't have to log into it, so it's not capturing any data. So we think it's a safe place to take kids. How can we use tools like that that are backed by the power of ChatGPT, that are backed by the power of these large language models, to really influence and affect students in the classroom, that can help level up their thinking rather than turn them into thoughtless drones? Can level up their creativity than turn them into they have no idea what figurative language is.
Definitely. So a couple things. When we talk about what AI we want to do, back to the whole, we want it to do our dishes and our laundry, I think the same thing can be applied to our students. AI provides a mechanism for them to have a thought partner at any point in time in their life.
Right.
A mentor at any point in time in their life. A mentor that has been tailored specifically to their needs and has the guardrails in place to ensure that the responses are safe and accurate. And so I think to my students at home, I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. I've got a 3rd grader and a kindergartner. I would have no qualms, no problems with them interacting with Magic School's Rain and chatbot. We will do things where we ask them open-ended questions. Hey, what is your favorite animal? Let's learn something about them today. And have them use their curiosity drive that interaction. I have no qualms with that because, again, we're giving them a pathway, an avenue to a resource on there. So I think it opens up the whole process of learning for them to always have a mentor right beside them. And I think that opens up asynchronous learning in a way we may not have had always available to them, because the single biggest indicator of success is the teacher in the classroom. That's just, if you look at any stat in any chart, student success hinge on teacher success. The teacher is only one resource in the classroom, and they're usually have 20, 25, 30, however many kids they have in there. If they have something that can assist and come alongside that to provide a place to bounce ideas off of or ask the question they're too afraid to ask in front of their peers, then they have a pathway to get the answers they need when they need it. So as far as having a student mentor, I think these tools are phenomenal with that. And you and I, we've tried to break them. We've put them through their paces, and it doesn't ever return the answer. It always follows up a question with a question, which is huge. I mean, if you think about what that's doing to our students' brains of having them seek the knowledge, it doesn't frustrate them, but it pulls understanding out of them based off of previous experiences and understanding. So I think having that mentor is huge on there. It provides a safety net, so to speak, or not safety net. That's the wrong term. It provides a process in which they can bounce ideas off of, and that they can make various connections with on there. I think too, it helps them. I always call it the white paper syndrome, and we experience that in our writing.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes, we just don't know how to start.
Yeah.
Once we have something started, we can finish out whatever it may need to do. And so I think that can be huge within that. And then diving in a little bit to personal learning experiences, the idea of having these learning platforms, and we're just now starting to see a few come on board, but adaptive learning programs for the student, I think that is huge. Having something that the student interacts in, as they interact, as they answer questions, as they do things, levels what they're doing or puts them on a path based off of how they do. That is something that beforehand would be so manual and process as to make it where no teacher has the time to do that for 30 kids, let alone 120. Now we have a tool, or we very soon will have tools that can do that, which I can't stress enough. Gamification also. I mean, we've seen gamification in the classroom really come in to its own in the last 5 or 6 years. I think this is going to be a step change to that, because again, adding that adaptive nature there, I think can just grow that huge into that.
You said something a couple minutes ago that really sparked my interest, because when you're talking about asynchronous learning, I think that we're at the very beginning of that. And even though we've been doing it for 30 years, there's been asynchronous. I mean, you can go back to correspondence courses that's been going on for 100 years. But I think, and this is why that excites me so much, because I like the idea of access. I'll clarify that. I like the idea that students can learn anywhere. Anybody can learn anywhere. and we've isolated learning into the walls of our schoolhouse for so long. We're sometimes missing, and we're sometimes losing out on, and perhaps we're a bit myopic in how we're considering how learning can take place at all. And I think that yes, the internet has opened us up to that, but I think that some of these AI tools, the adaptive programs that you were just talking about, really can level up how our students learn, when they learn, where they learn. And to me, it's terribly exciting to think about the possibilities of learning taking place absolutely anywhere. And I think that we have the responsibility as educators to do the very best that we can right now to expose our students to learning everywhere, because that's where it's going to go. I think that's absolutely where we are headed in the world of education.
And we've got several teachers, or not several, many teachers that have embraced a flipped classroom.
Yeah.
I think this comes along right inside that,
Yeah.
because the idea of a flipped classroom is I send the students home with the instruction that I would normally give. They then have time in the classroom with the expert to help answer questions,
Yeah.
redirect, refocus, reteach what they need, instead of the opposite. The problem, though, is that the hard thing that comes with flipped classroom is you're sending the kids home with information they've never seen before.
Right.
Well, now imagine you have AI that comes along with that. So you have the instruction that they're going to have, and then any questions they need or anything like that, you've got something that can go alongside of it.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't replace the teacher,
Not
any
at all,
mechanism,
yeah.
but it makes the impact that they have in the classroom so much more impactful, because now they're coming to me not only with some pre-knowledge, but they've also had some questions asked and some
Right.
questions answered. And I, as the teacher, if they're using the right tools, have a log of all the questions they've had.
Absolutely.
So I can review that and say, okay, if 30 of my kids out of 120 ask this, well, I know I need to reteach that. I know I need to bring something in. I need to know how to do that. So I think that's huge. Another thing that I feel like is just so impactful, and we don't spend too much time talking about this, but just the assistive technologies that this provides, and bringing equity into education. The assistive side, I mean, when we used to think text-to-speech was the end all be all, and now we have things that will help and act as their eyes. So if we have students that need sighted assistance,
Right.
we have AI enabled apps that will be their eyes. We have ones that will translate on the fly right then and there, and they can understand what it's saying on there, which is just opening up the world to students that need these accessibilities. They need these accessibility apps they now have that they didn't have before. So I think it's breaking down those kind of barriers that used to impact learning. And again, we're just at the cusp of that. We're just seeing these come out. So in 5 years, it's just going to be amazing.
Absolutely. So I think that when we're considering how should we use this, I think we've moved beyond should we use them, and I think that's where we have to get as educators. Is it's not should we use them, it's how should we use them, because we've got to find creative ways, and it's our responsibility, and we owe it to our students to do the very best that we can to prepare them for every situation. And so we've got to give them these tools, we've got to give them these strategies to help them learn how to ask good questions. And you were referencing that tool that it simply asks more and more and more leading questions. And my thing with that, the reason I love that tool so much, is because if we're teaching our students how to ask good questions, then we've already beat the average in students, because we want our kids to be questioners. We want them to be inquisitive, because it's that curiosity and that inquisitiveness that leads them to solutions, that leads them to curing cancers, that leads them to finding more efficient ways to travel, faster ways to travel. And if anybody can create a teleportation device, my wife will love you, because she hates flying. So if you can just get her there right now. But it's, who knows, right?
And the biggest thing too, the one thing that's so impactful with all this is when you're talking about having students learn how to question well,
Yeah.
the side benefit from that, or the residual benefit from that, is they become better at short constructed and long constructed response.
Absolutely.
When we talk about interacting with these tools, it's
Yeah.
talking about prompting. And
Yes.
prompting is nothing more than a short constructed response. And right now I could hazard that most schools in the state of Texas want to improve short constructed response.
Yeah.
And so by leaning into these tools, they will innately make better response, or have students have better responses within their short constructed response.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I think that that we've and again, this is a philosophical conversation. We can get deeper into the details on what tools to use, how to use these, how to really approach this with your students. But it's really the matter of changing our mindset, changing our paradigm to considering the AI as a thought partner, as a tool. What you see on the screen here is just a little graphic. And I love this quote right here. And it says, "We envision a technology-enhanced future more like an electric bike and less like robot vacuums. On an electric bike, the human is fully aware, the human is fully in control, the burden is less, and the effort is multiplied by complementary technological enhancement." I ride mountain bikes, and we were in Bentonville, Arkansas, and I'm pedaling my bike up the hill, and it's taking every bit of effort that I've got, and I see these guys in these electric bikes just because the point of riding mountain bikes is not pedaling up the hill, it's riding down the hill. And so they're just getting to the fun faster, and I'm 30 minutes behind trying to get to the fun, and I'm exhausted.
breath.
By the time I get there. And I love that metaphor, thinking about it like that. It's just getting to the fun faster.
And you're still in control.
Yeah.
You're still directing that bike. You're telling it, hey, I'm going left, I'm going right. It's not taking over control.
Right.
I'd kind of set you up for a landmine here with Grammarly. Is Grammarly not? Before AI even existed, Grammarly had a huge market share. Everybody loved using Grammarly. And what's been interesting is the conversation has been, well, I use Grammarly to enhance my writing, but I can't use ChatGPT to enhance my writing. The question to you is Grammarly not just an electric bike?
Oh, it's the same thing. Absolutely the same thing. You can go before that and just spell checker.
Yeah.
And spell checker that's been around for 30 years, at least. I don't know how long spell checker's been around. Been around for a long time. That's the exact same thing. Because before then, I had to know how to spell everything. Or I had to go look in a dictionary to find out how to spell it. And I'm not resentful of spell checker. I love spell checker because it saves me so many embarrassing errors. I'm like, oh, wait, need to change that. Although sometimes the autocorrect is really frustrating.
Yes. Yeah.
But those are the same thing. So I'm like, man, use them. Use them up. I think they're great.
We spoke recently. There's some ethical considerations about students using this to improve writing or help writing or write on their behalf, which is a whole thing. But I took advantage of the writing labs that we had at colleges.
Both my parents were English teachers. I used them. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, my wife would review some of the work I did, and I would review some of the work she did in college to make sure everything was there. I think the intent plays a huge factor when we talk about morals and ethics and how to use it. But again, we have to remember, what is the core that we're doing? Are we trying to enhance our own thoughts, or are we trying to replace our thoughts? Yeah. The electric bike is enhancing thought. The Roomba or the vehicle is replacing an activity I would have done before. And I think that's key. And we've got to teach that difference and distinction to our students.
Yeah, we do. And that's the challenge. And so let's just shift and go on to the challenge because we're almost at time here. The challenge is we've got to teach our students discernment. And that's the trouble, is because what 12-year-old knows discernment?
What 40-year-old knows
Absolutely.
discernment?
Yeah. And really, that really is it, is how do we teach discernment to our students? Because there's a right and wrong way to do everything. Before ChatGPT or whatever, I could still look at my neighbor's paper and get the answers. Hopefully they were smart enough to have the answers, but it's the same kind of thing. We're teaching discernment to our students, because here's the other thing: whatever we get back, and this is for teachers too, whatever we get back from AI, we still are responsible for what we put on the page. So if I'm putting it on the page, then I've got to make sure that it's accurate. And so it can't just be, I've had this thing write my report for me. I've got to make sure that what I'm putting on the page is accurate, wherever I'm turning it in, because that is the ethics of it, is I can't claim it as mine, and I especially am responsible for the information that I'm putting out there. And our students are the exact same way. We've got to teach them not to claim things that aren't theirs. And then we've also got to teach them that when they put it on the paper, they're responsible for it at that point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's some key things too as educators that we have to be mindful of, and that comes down to intent. Show me the teak that tells you to teach discernment. And sadly, there's not one. And it's a multi-year, multi-decade, lifelong process that we have to do on there. I think it goes back to the source of anything. We have to make sure that our students understand how to hear various different viewpoints of an item, subject, things like that, and know how to discern what is correct, what is right, what is valuable on there.
So, all right. So this is really 33-minute introduction still into AI, because this is such a vast concept. And then we do 6-hour workshops on this that honestly aren't long enough,
No.
because we could still spend much more time talking about this, because this is such a big idea. So, shameless plug for that is we would love to come out to your district and talk with you, talk with your leaders, talk with your teachers, talk with your instructional personnel, talk with anybody about this, because this is going to become a bigger part of education as we go on. So, hit us up, call us up. We'd love to come out and hang out with you and talk. So.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Learning Curve. We'll see you in the next one.
Welcome to the curve, where ideas take flight. Blending tech and teaching, sparking insight. From digital tips to stories untold,